Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and welcome. Sorry for the few minutes delay. We just had a technical difficulties and would like to welcome you to this broadcast. This is really to look at the year in review in the Islamophobia field, development that took place, but more importantly, to put some context to the year ahead that we're looking at. Very important. Islamophobia is not declining, but actually is on the rise, and we continue to find many instances occurring, both the on the regular basis in terms of the everyday life, but more importantly, what we want to pay attention to is the structural Islamophobia that continue to face us. So I want to go through some of the highlights in terms of the year 2021. And by no means this is exhaustive, but just to get us a sense of what we have experienced this past year, and also will give some sense of what is to expect in the year 2022. First, to think about the social media space. uh, Year 2021, we witnessed both as a result of the whistleblower from Facebook, as well as the whole issues in relations to Twitter, Instagram, and it really came into focus with the Palestine or the attacks in Palestine during the last part of the month of April into May, during the month of Ramadan, that the social media space has become really ground zero for the continued utilization of Islamophobia, allowing the Islamophobes almost a free hand, using the platforms, Twitter and Facebook, as really a gathering and a rallying place for the Islamophobia industry. In many parts, the Islamophobia industry utilizing it to rally attacks and to use it as a way to target individuals with some of the most pernicious types of attacks and content that are placed in there. Both Twitter and Facebook really take the lead in being at the hub of the Islamophobia content, allowing both organizations and individuals to use it. And in here, we might highlight some of the things in relations to its use, whether it's in India, Myanmar, as well as within the United States, especially as right-wing individuals were having all these Facebook pages that are utilizing with almost an open-ended attack on Muslims, while simultaneously, in particular, Facebook actually utilizing uh, the uh, the platform to actually censor Muslims and almost allowing the censoring and taking out Muslim content time and time again, especially as it relates to Palestine, where the content relative to Palestine was often being censored, individuals' pages being locked, and constantly being a source of not only allowing demonization of Muslims, but also not allowing Muslims actually or allies to speak on issues relating to Palestine or Islam and Muslims in a neutral, objective way. So I think this is a major development. And what we need is in this following year, as it relates to social media space, is to make sure that they're held responsible and accountable for allowing their platforms to be almost used constantly as a site for the demonization of Islam and Muslims. Second highlight that I want to speak about in 2021, and I think we continue to see its ravages and I project that they will continue to see it in the year 2022. The attack on Muslim political figures. So targeting of American Muslim politicians, whether it's Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ibrahim Maish, and Keith Ellison, and others, with a constant utilization of using some of the most despicable types of attacks on both Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib in particular, because they are the most highly visible Muslims, but never missing an opportunity to constantly demonize Islam and Muslims. And we saw this in relations to the attack on Ilhan Omar as it relates to her having a backpack and making a reference and a nod that whether it is actually having any type of bomb in it, and a reference to jihad. So this is actually within the halls of Congress, and you could actually imagine the type of vitriol attacks that have been directed at both Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and I would expect that Muslims who are running for office will continue to face this onslaught of attacks on a regular basis. What is important and significant for us is that we actually began to be aware of it. And in this sense, targeting Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, less so possibly Andrew Carson, but still he will face such attack, is that their attack is an attempt to try to push Muslims out of civil society, in saying that they don't belong into the halls of power and influence, and they should not be treated equally and with dignity in those areas. So this is very important for us to understand that the targeting of American Muslim politicians is something that will have occurred extensively in 2021. And if I may say, not in here as a political endorsement of one party or the other, but it seems that the Republican Party in particular have hitched its wagon to Islamophobia and to the demonization of Muslims, using it as a way to try to possibly gain votes by utilization of Islamophobia in that way. So that's, again, is a second aspect or a second major development that we witnessed in 2021. Third is the burqa ban that took place in Sri Lanka, and also the closing of 1,000 schools, or the closing of Islamic schools. But for sure, the ban on the burqa in Sri Lanka is not something new. It's not the first of its kind. Actually, France takes the lead in the banning of the burqa and the demonization and the targeting of Muslims. But we see in here that Sri Lanka targeting of Muslims and utilizing all types of demonization in relations to Islam and Muslims, in essence saying that they don't belong, and also cast them as an other. Now, Sri Lanka have had a long history of Islam and Muslims in the country, so this is not, you can't say that Islam is an unknown. It's actually, there's a long history of Muslims being there. There's a long history of relations, coastal relations, trade with the Muslim world, as well as in the surrounding area. But this is an element or a feature that I would say we can become more aware of it. This rising tide of right-wing political discourses that we saw initially develop in Europe and the United States, but now it's actually becoming a feature across the world, Sri Lanka being one of those countries that is experiencing this demonization of Muslims, and using this fear of Islam and fear of Muslims, in particular using the identity of a Muslim woman with the burqa or the face cover as a way to rally nationalist sentiment and to also define who belong and who doesn't belong to the broader society. So in this sense, you could see that this is a development that we need to continue to watch over, and it's also something that is present in France and present in Canada, but it is to see it develop in Sri Lanka at this particular time. It's something that in 2021 we have uh, seen it, and it is something that is alarming. Now, the fourth item that I wanted to highlight in terms of 2029, schools or schools in the United States exhibiting Islamophobic content. In particular, the Baltimore County Public School leaders remove an image depicting a negative stereotype of people who practice Islam from the school system's online math curriculum. Now, we might think that this is only a single case, but we actually, what we find is that curriculums in many parts of the country are actually using and deploying Islamophobic content in the curriculum. In exams, what we find is often questions that bring in content relating to Islam, but is always crafted in negative. Some questions about math that really should not use or utilize Islamophobia, deploy Islamophobia. In one case, a question unrelated to Islam and Muslims, talking about a possibility of shoplifting and what would be the punishment, and immediately deploying this aspect of cutting the hand as a reference to Islam and Muslims, even though that question was in relations to a U.S. context. So increasingly, this aspect of schools allowing Islamophobic content to occur. And in a cases where actually the student referencing his teacher, where the student is asking a question to the teacher, and the teacher responding by saying, we don't negotiate with terrorists, or we don't respond to terrorists. So again, the language in the classroom, the treatment of Muslims in the classroom, and this is also would speak of research that has been done by CARE in the schools in California, but also other research that deals with Islamophobia have actually looked at the experiences of Muslims in the classrooms. So, for example, we have in an earlier research, 55% of K through 12 school students of Muslim background experience bullying as a result of their religious identity. And then at the university level, we had an article that came out yesterday from the Washington Post that specifically addressed how Muslims actually in the university level are not actually given the appropriate attention when issues of Islamophobia arises. So when a Muslim complains about Islamophobic incidents, it's often as if they are guilty themselves. So the assumption of guilt is associated or often directed at the Muslims rather than responding. And I've been encouraging that the universities need to take Islamophobia seriously, and it's not sufficient just to put a number of images around the campus of women in hijab, or a marketing material to say that here we have Muslims on campus. That is just the bare minimum of actually putting some public relations material, but often it's almost harmful, because it actually gives the impression that the schools and the universities are actually addressing Islamophobia, and they're actually almost maintaining the status quo in there. So this is an area of concern in relations to schools and colleges, universities, using and deploying Islamophobia. And I'm very concerned about the curriculum in particular, especially as we had the state of California battle over the model ethnic studies curriculum, where some of the Islamophobes, as well as the pro-Israel forces rallied to try to derail the model, the California model ethnic studies curriculum. And I would say that in essence rested on removing and almost cleansing the curriculum from any type of concrete engagement with Islam and Muslims in that way. So again, this is very important for us to actually think of how the school and the school system in this sense. So again, this is for us to actually think about the curriculum itself and how Islamophobia in schools and in college curriculum is not addressed as such. I see that Hormoz is saying that do you think this could be a result of Muslims by and large being silent for non-Islamic behaviors of those publicly known as Muslims in this world? While some can actually point that a Muslim who are engaging in non-Islamic behavior is a cause of some concern, I think race and racialization of Muslims is really an issue that predates some of the actions and events that took place. Actually, even the term Islamophobia itself originates from the early 1910 in the French context, where the author who wrote the term Islamophobia was speaking about the inimical feelings or the inimical treatment of Muslims by the French colonial enterprise in North Africa. And then Edward Said picked up the term in his 1979 and then 1980-81 covering Islam. While some always try to associate that the actions of Muslims rationalize or explains the negative reactions and experience, I'm a person that does not actually make this causalities or the correlation in this sense. Is there a correlation between a Muslim actions and the negative reactions to them, or the causality? I think the media tends to actually amplify and focus on this, which in this sense begins to result in our thinking that is the causality of what is occurring or developing a sense of correlation. I tend to describe it also in the following, that many who try to speak about, let's say, racism against blacks, immediately say, well, if blacks can be better in their communities or ending black on black violence or crime, which in this sense becomes a big excuse for the long history of racism, structural racism and racism directed at blacks, even before a crime in the neighborhood. So even a black who's an affluent still receives the same type of racism. So again, I don't think I'm a person that makes this linkages, but I'm really thank you for the comment in this sense. The next item that on my list, which is the fifth item, is the European Union Parliament motion that called on European Commission to amend eligibility for programs to draw from union budget for outspoken Muslim academics and their political agency. The Austrian government in particular targeted Muslim institutions and individuals, which included actually one of our colleagues that works with the center in this, the center, Farid Hafiz. But just a couple of days ago, the Austrian government actually dropped the cases altogether with no evidence whatsoever. So in here, the European Union is increasingly, or member states with the European Union, are actually not acting to uphold the European Human Rights Charter, not protecting and providing the needed protection for their Muslim population across, and increasingly again using all types of labels. They're saying they're fighting Islamist political activity, using it to as a way to say they're fighting terrorism. This is at the same time where France, in particular, which I will mention later on, has deployed troops in Mali and is engaged in the Francophone countries, is engaged in interference in North Africa, and just yesterday had a bombing raid in northern Iraq. So again, this simplistic way of one racializing and targeting Muslims, and in the other, actually not utilizing or allowing for the remedies to be used to address the needs of Muslims within the European Union. So the European Union is really is not adhering to some of the principles in relation to protection of human rights, and in essence, using all of its efforts to demonize, marginalize, and target the Muslim populations as well. The sixth item on our list for the 2021 is the hit and run case or issue that in Ontario, in London, Ontario, Canada, that kills an entire Muslim family. Now, in here, this again is to point out that Islamophobia is deadly. It's been deadly for quite a long period of time. The whole family was killed by means of this hit and run. But I also want to remind people that the Dia, Yusr, and Razan, the three young Muslim college students here in the United States, in North Carolina, that were shot by their assailant, Islamophobic right-wing white supremacist in this sense, and killing them in their own house. And even before that, we go to the targeting of the Sikh community as often being mistaken of being Muslim. So Islamophobia has been deadly, and increasingly individuals feel emboldened to use violence against Muslims, in this case, the hit and run, and also targeting all types of institutions, whether mosques, schools, and so forth. So this is a phenomena that we need to continue to be alerted to and aware of it in order for us to know that Islamophobia is deadly. It has been in the past, and my assumption that as we get into the next election cycles, it will continue to escalate, and individuals will actually act individually, but the Islamophobic social imagery, the atmosphere in the society, even the discourses in the media and so on, have made it almost an acceptable undertaking to target Muslims in that way. The seventh issue that I wanted to highlight is the attacks on that took place during the month of Ramadan in Al-Aqsa Mosque on the 27th night, which would be one of the most sacred nights in the month of Ramadan, that the Israeli forces attacked Al-Aqsa Mosque. And what makes it Islamophobic is that it's the third sacred site for Muslims. Muslims around the world were actually tuned into the Ramadan prayers that were taking place from Al-Aqsa Mosque, and witnessing the assault that was unfolding in front of their eyes on Al-Aqsa Mosque. And this was on the most sacred, one of the most sacred nights in the month of Ramadan. On the 27th of month of Ramadan is known to be the Laylatul Qadr, and this is where the night where Quran was revealed, and most people are often spend the night in prayers and in supplication. And then this was followed by the campaign, the bombing campaign on Gaza, where we witnessed the demolitions of buildings, even the attack on the media center that was attacked by Israel, and the buildings were demolished. So this was also an Islamophobic attack that took place. And in essence, it's one of those things that we actually continue to see this unfold almost on a daily basis. There's attacks and an attempt to arrive at Al-Aqsa Mosque to disrupt and to insist on aspects of Muslim rights to their own side, to their own religious side, is being undermined. So again, so you could see that it is occurring at this point, that the attacks in Palestine continues to unfold, and as such, we need to be aware of it and continue to follow, because house demolitions, the attacks in Sheikh Jarrah, Silwan, Burqa, and others are occurring almost on a daily basis. Uh, Tariqa says, what are your views on Islamophobia and hate speech in South Asia? The violence against Muslims and other religious minorities in South Asia is increasing every day, and every passing day. Uh, how you think it is different from the discrimination happening with Muslims in other parts of the world? Actually, I'm gonna come back to that, which is actually one of the points I'm gonna highlight. The next three items. One is the Islamophobic campaign in France is intensifying, both with uh, not only Macron's, who have unleashed the state power to target Muslim communities, closing about 24 mosques in the country, also closing many civil society organization. Our counterparts in France, the organization that actually monitors Islamophobia in France, was shuttered by the French authority, which is CCIF. Also, Baraka City is a non-profit organization, and the French government is accusing individuals that are actually working and pointing out the discrimination that Muslims are facing, accusing them of engaging in separatism. So France really has become the primary laboratory where where the French government is in essence using the state power as an instrument to put forth all types of Islamophobic policies. The most recent development also is that the upcoming presidential election, candidate Eric Zemmour, who's running for the presidency, and already polling around 17%. And if you add the other politician from the extreme right wing, Marine Le Pen, which also polling either the same or a little bit more, you have two major figures, in addition to Macron, three political figures that vying for the presidential election in France, that all are using Islamophobic and anti-Muslim discourses in order to try to win the elections. And with it also an attempt to undo or at least rewrite French history in relations to Algeria, which actually is almost present in there, because Algeria has been a source or a site of French engagement in a negative way, in terms of Islamophobic way, with the Muslim world. So Algeria, it's that site of both from the colonial legacy all the way up to the present, that is still preoccupies the French political elite with an attempt to try to rewrite history, as well as present French experience and atrocities in Algeria in a cleansed, cleaned version of history. So we see that this is dynamic. So far, the French have not yet went through a 12-step program toward recognition of their colonial legacy in there. The next two items, which address both the issues that not only South Asia, but also one is China, the Islamophobia in China, with the treatment and the continued concentration of or using camps for the Uyghur community in China, where it's labor camps that the Uyghur of the Muslim Uyghur communities are being held, and also that the fact that almost there is a complete silence in there. And more importantly, that China actually urged or pressured Apple Computer or Apple company to remove a Quran app from China, in particular in provinces or areas where Muslims will access this Quranic app. So the circumstances and the situation of the Uyghur community in China is really one that is facing tremendous violence, and the full weight of the Chinese states is being used to uh, not only demolish mosques, close schools, but also to arrest and put in camps large numbers, mass numbers. Some estimates put it up to 2 million individuals, Uyghur, are placed in these so-called re-education or labor camps that are managed by the Chinese government. So, if anything, this is one of the most, if either the most or one of the most detrimental cases of Islamophobic discourse that we are witnessing, which is in China at this point. And I know that we are coming up to the Olympics, and there is a call for boycotting the Winter Olympics as a result of this. And it's something that we need to urge both this action relative to boycotting the Olympics, but also to call on human rights organizations and others to take the circumstances that are befalling the Uyghur seriously. The last issue I want to highlight is the situation in India, Islamophobia in India, and the continued use of language that is genocidal in nature, that continues to urge for the cleansing of Muslims from India. And it also could be would be also attached to it to the circumstances that we are seeing also in Kashmir. Both in Kashmir, there is an alert of a genocide alert in Kashmir, which had almost 900,000 Indian troops stationed in there, with daily killings and deaths occurring. Complete total almost censorship and blockade of the country from media and communication with the outside world. So this is a circumstance, but also in terms of India itself, with the BJP party, with using Hindutva ideology to stoke the Hindu nationalists, Hindu extreme nationalists, which also are inspired by Nazi ideology, responsible for the assassination of Gandhi themselves, the RSS, and the Hindutva advocate. And now they're targeting and calling for the genocide and the ethnic cleansing of Muslims from India, but also targeting Christian churches, putting to firebombing churches, and really having all types of violence directed at the Christian communities in India. So this is the circumstance that we are seeing, where the language, the intensification of language, the targeting Muslims is occurring on a daily basis. Also, that the utilization of Bollywood, where the movies are being also instrumentalized to push the Hindutva and the demonization of Islam and Muslims in this sense. So this is a concern that really is very critical, and it's very important for us to keep an eye and not to allow it to actually to go unchecked and unobserved and unmonitored. So these are some of the things that we are watching and continue to observe and look at as it relates to Islamophobia field. If anything, I actually highlight Islamophobia in looking at it in a few different, like 5 different zones. One is the social media zone, which I spoke about. This is where Islamophobia is deployed in the various social media platforms, and very important for us to continue to be aware of that. The second is what I consider to be is North America zone, that include the United States and Canada, with Canada also being split in one zone being also close to Europe. This zone where the state apparatus using surveillance and also media demonization of Muslims and allowing the targeting of Muslims. So that's the zone that is North America. The European zone, which is witnessing the rising tide of extreme right-wing parties, neo-Nazi parties that have taken on utilization of Islamophobia as a way to come back into respectability and posit themselves that they're rescuing Western society from the attack that is coming from these immigrants and refugees. And you'll see in here that the replacement theory, which is again an idiotic theory, a theory that is rooted in racism, rooted in Nazi-like thinking, in essence saying that these refugees, in particular targeting Muslims, are coming to replace the white race in Europe. And what we need is to defend the European society from this. Now, in here, it allows the Western society, in particular the French, the British, and the Dutch, the Belgium, and so on, to rewrite history. In essence, decontextualize the reasons that we continue to find and to see this massive refugees and immigrants on the move. So in this sense, interventions, wars that have been a reality of Western interventions in particular. So, we didn't have Iraqi refugees or immigrants prior to U.S. intervention in Iraq, but now we have massive refugees taking place and immigrants as a result of this intervention. Similar, we would speak about the situation or the intervention in Afghanistan. In France, in particular, France continues to intervene in the Francophone countries. Just the past few weeks, France redeployed troops or re-strengthened its troops in Mali. It's involved in the Francophone zones. Economically, it also intervened in Libya. So it allows this decontextualization of history. So this is the European zone that has, again, the replacement theory and neo-Nazi groups are using and utilizing Islamophobia as a way to gain respectability and to put themselves that they are rescuers and protectors of Western society. And in this sense, you could attach the replacement theory with the clash of civilization. And basically, you have two idiotic theories that are utilized to drive white resentment and win election in that way. So and again, is monetizing Islamophobia in this way or this pattern. So that's a third zone in there. The fourth zone is actually Muslim majority states that are also utilizing a form of Islamophobia by trying to draft or craft the good Muslim from bad Muslim. So the good Muslim, long and behold, is the one that supports the state policies. So again, the leading states in this are United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Morocco. All are crafting and attempting to craft what good Islam is and what bad Islam is. So anyone that opposes the policies and the politics of the state, in essence, is crafted to be beholden to the wrong Islam, while those who affirm and support state-oriented policies in the way that it is, maintaining the political order, the economic disparities as is being crafted and projected as the good Islam. The last zone is the genocide zone. And this is, again, in relations to China, Myanmar, in terms of Burma, India, Kashmir. This is where Muslims, in essence, are experiencing Islamophobia with the warning of impending or genocide that would be also a possibility. Now, we could include in here that the situation in the Palestinian territories has a possibility also of being included in both the European zone, but also could be included in the genocide zone, since apartheid, settler colonialism, apartheid in Palestine would actually also fulfill uh, the uh, the treaty or the Convention on Genocide as it relates to the Palestinians. But this is actually a zone that Islamophobia is articulated in a discourse that is genocidal in nature and pushes policies that are rooted in ethnic cleansing and removal of the population and transformation of these societies. So in the 2022, we are going to come in the United States and in particular in France. We will be coming into the midterm elections in the US and the French presidential elections. We're going to witness possibly another intense round of Islamophobic discourses, and we will be looking forward to doing some surveying in order to at least assess prior as well as during what will be the feedback of people on this particular upcoming election and how the Muslims would locate themselves. On the positive part, I think the adoption of Congress of the resolution that calls for the establishment of a monitoring office in the State Department to look at Islamophobia in the international arena is a very, very significant development. It's a resolution that was led by Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar from Minnesota. So that's a positive development. We still need to see it being adopted in the Senate. And that is a positive development that we could actually possibly begin to have data and research that's coming out, as well as points of pressure to try to effect the developments of Islamophobia. Another element is that also increasingly within some of the corporate and business arena are beginning to take some small steps to recognition of Islamophobia within their HR, within their human resource area. And increasingly, we are working with a number of these companies in order to both put some training and also some awareness of the developments that are taking place as it relates to HR area. So that's a positive development. It's still small steps, but it is an important small steps that needs to take place. So really, I wanted for us to share the past years, things that we highlighted relative to the Islamophobia field and what we have witnessed. And maybe I could conclude saying that on a more structural aspect in terms of our work in the Islamophobia Studies Center is actually we have launched the International Islamophobia Research and Studies Association. We are referring to it as ISRA. This is an international studies association that will have scholars from across the world, scholars that engage in the field of Islamophobia studies that are all engaging as members. There's already a board that has been formulated, and the founding conference will be actually in May in Berkeley, California. So that's a major development where we actually have a formalized academic field that looks at the Islamophobia as an academic field for people to engage in research and also engagement. So for those who are with us, thank you for being with me. And for those who commented, really thank you for your comment or for your questions. And if you have any other questions, by all means, feel free to ask, and I will wait a couple of seconds before I conclude. So if you have any questions, please write it on the chat, and I'll try my best to answer those in the next few minutes before. Really, this is Islamophobia studies field is expanding, and we'll continue to do the work that is needed in order for us to continue to have an impact. So, seeing no questions from those with us, really thank you for being with me, and look forward to seeing you again. For all those, Happy New Year, and may this following year to be one that is full with much blessings, peace, and tranquility. We wish that, I pray and hope that we will have a better year next year without COVID. If you have lost a family member, my condolences and sympathies to you and to your family. And if you are really have been impacted, we look forward to coming out of this difficult period that humanity is finding itself. So may next year be better than this one. And thank you for being with us today. Assalamu alaikum.